for the longest time, and I still struggle with this on a daily basis, my art, my music, whatever it was I'm doing, sermons, were a way for me to be validated.
It was your identity.
100%.
I feel that.
Like, all right. And that's one of the reasons it was so hard for me to finish things. It was so hard for me to, like, we were talking about finishing things earlier. Hard for me to finish things. It was so hard for them to be critiqued because it was like, that's my heart, red heart beating out there. My whole being was wrapped up in that. And that's just not sustainable. And so the more I found my identity in things that can't change, like God, love, people who, real relationships, beauty, nature, things that can't change. When I find myself anchored in those things, I'm more free to create and not be so wrapped up in that thing. Like, is this good? Is this good? Is this good? Mm-hmm. Rather than it being a product of this love. And just being, and I found that the greatest gift I think God gave me is just the freedom of just being an anonymous, normal person. And I think if I'd gotten fame at 23, 24, 25, I wouldn't be sitting here. I couldn't have handled it. I would have been ripped to shreds. I just wouldn't be on the planet. I can't imagine, or I wouldn't be able to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. But having relationships, friendships, a wife who loves me, who's totally sane, who doesn't give a rip, who never has given a rip of if I'm a songwriter or a preacher or a ditch digger. She just doesn't care. Like, she loves me. She's not impressed by any of this stuff. She never was. And just loves me. Like, I don't understand. To this day, it just kind of amazes me. Like, what do you mean? Just love me as a person? Like, just because I'm here? Like, I never experienced that growing up, even. So, like, well, you just love me. I'm, like, not doing anything because I thought love was you did this thing. So the more I found myself rooted in and found myself and continually rooted in God's love and enjoying my children, in having friends who don't care what I do, but are just my friends who love me, I can go out and do these things, instead of it being this, like, it just turns me into Gollum. I've been like Gollum my whole life. You know Gollum, the character from
Schmeagol.
Yeah, Schmeagol. I don't know how nerdy this podcast is, so I have to make sure that but Schmeagol's like this, he's this almost reptilian frog-like character who's obsessed with the precious ring, right? Mm-hmm. And that was most of my, like, 20s, and, like, going through, I was just like, my music, and I was so jealous. I couldn't be happy for anyone else. I would have secretly felt competitive, jealous, or critical of anyone who else was talented, that sucks to be in Nashville because everyone else is as talented or more talented than you are. So, like, I hated anyone's success, but then I felt gross. Sorry. Then I felt gross for being jealous of them. Like, oh, so-and-so's like, oh, they're great. And, like, I was always impressed with people who are, like, huge fans of other people's music. And I was like, how do you do that? I hate them for having success.
This brings up a good point because I do think in my journey, it's really been a battle for identity. And I think that's true of all of us. But there's a freedom once you kind of cross that chasm of figuring out, like, you have to have an ego death for God to really do anything, or to really be able to freely just create and have those 30-minute songs that finish, and the magic moments. You have to get out of your own way for that.
100%.
Unless your songs are all about ego.
Right.
Unless your songs are all about ego.
Yeah.
So what was the moment or moments where you had that ego death?
Oh, man. What a great question, Hill. Sorry.
I love that. We're gonna keep that cough on there.
Yeah,
by the
please
way.
do, please do.
And that.
And that. It's great. It's great. Sonically. So,
It could have been a season too.
dude, it is ego deaths are I can't how many it's daily. It's like wrestling with that part of me is my story. And for a long time I was just like, when am I gonna get to this place where I'm like no longer struggling with ego and no longer, and I don't know, I'm 49. I've never probably, like I've talked to guys in their 70s and they're still struggling with it. It's sort of like accepting that is part of the process of dealing with my ego, and my false self is always going to be there. And sort of accepting that process rather than thinking it's going to, I'm finally going to get over it, was a big part of my problem. I was like, I must suck at just being human. Because like, why can't I just like get over this ego thing? Why can't I figure this out? What's the code? And instead of like going, oh, this is the journey. Like yesterday, there was this, I had a song that I was working on, and I was sending it to some people, and I wanted like, I was really excited about it, and I wanted immediate affirmation. And I turned into Gollum for like 2 hours. And I was just like, I remember my wife, she was like, where are you? What are you doing? Or she was like, I had gone on a run. I still hadn't showered. And she was like, supper's ready. What are you doing? I almost felt like I was like, had been looking at porn.
Mm.
I had that feeling of like, I felt ashamed and exposed. And what I was doing is I was like texting back and forth. I was like, glad you like it. What do you think about this? And it was a moment where I realized I'd gotten enough recovery and health to know what it felt like to be Gollum again. Like my ego, I had merged with my ego, and I was miserable, and I felt gross and ashamed. And she's like, I'm sorry you felt, I said, I did. I was like embarrassed that I felt like you caught me. And it was a really vulnerable moment, but I just like I realized there's still this part of me. And here's the thing, it's not just my ego. There's a part of me that's so broken and wounded that I don't want anyone to see, but it's a little boy, or it's a 13-year-old, I don't know how old, that is looking for someone to say, am I okay?
Mm-hmm.
Am I good?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the child wound concept.
Am I talented?
You know?
And that part of me, when I merge with that, it takes over my life. But then there's a grown-up part of me that's like, hey, bud. So like it was actually, as gross as that felt to process that later on. My wife and I, we go on walks at night. We process this, and I was like, man, I spun out. And I told her what happened, and she was like, oh, wow. She was like, that's a lot of growth that you realized that you had spun out. And I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll do it again. I'm sure like when this podcast comes out, I was like, how many people liked it?
Right.
What do they say? Is this your best one? So, and my kids know it about me too.
Mm.
They're like, whenever I have Instagram, or I don't have Instagram, I don't have any, because I'm not mature enough. So like if I have a post, or if one of my friends does, or if something, they'll like say, hey dad, so-and-so posted this about you, or some whatever it is. And I was like, can I see it? Can I see it? And they're like, oh gosh. And like, he just keeps looking at it over and over and over. They know it. And there's like, gosh, dad. I was like,
Can you screen record that for me and send it to me?
100%.